following is an overview of 1930 in film, including significant events, a list of films released and notable births and deaths. Events: March 10, release of Goodbye Argentina, the first Argentine film with a soundtrack. Ada Cornero has her first starring role and Libertad Lamarck makes her film debut. November 1, The Big Trail featuring a young John Wayne in his first starring role is released in both 35mm and a very early form of 70mm film. It is the first large-scale big-budget film of the sound era, costing over $2 million. The film is praised for its aesthetic quality and realism that will not become commonplace until many decades later. However, due to the new film format and the films released during the Great Depression, the film will go on to become a financial failure at the box office. Top-grossing films. Academy Awards, Best Picture, All Quiet on the Western Front, Universal Studios, Best Actress, Norma Shearer, The Divorcee, Best Actor, George Arliss, Disraeli, Best Director, Louis Milestone, All Quiet on the Western Front. Notable films released in 1930, USA unless stated, Abi and Rabbi by Alvin Zuanian, Abraham Lincoln, starring Walter Houston November 8, 1930, Laig Dog, directed by Louis Bois ± well November 29, 1930, Aileron March 2, 1930, All Quiet on the Western Front, directed by Louis Milestone, starring Lou Ayres April 21, 1930, Animal Crackers, starring the Marx Brothers August 23, 1930, Anna Christie, starring Greta Garbo February 21, 1930, The Bad Man, starring Walter Houston, The Bat Whispers, starring Chester Morris and Una Merkel, Big Boy. A musical comedy with Al Jolson, The Big House, starring Chester Morris and Wallace Beery, The Big Pond, starring Maurice Chevalier and Claudette Colbert, The Big Trail, starring John Wayne, Der Blaue Engel, directed by Jos von Sternberg, starring Marlene Dietrich and Emil Jannings, The Blood of a Poet, directed by Jean Cocteau, Borderline, starring Paul Robeson, Bride of the Regiment, starring Walter Pidgeon, Bright Lights, directed by Michael Curtiz, a musical comedy in Technicolor, Call of the Flesh, starring Ramacube Den Navarro, a musical romance with Technicolor sequences, The Cat Creeps, starring Helen Twelvetrees, a mystery film released by Universal, Chasing Rainbows, starring Bessie Love, a musical comedy with Technicolor sequences, Check and Double Check, a comedy based on Amos N. Andy radio show, Children of Pleasure, a musical comedy with Technicolor sequences, City Girl, directed F. W. Murnau, Common Clay, starring Constance Bennett, The Cuckoos, a musical comedy with Technicolor sequences, Danger Lights, starring Louis Wilhelm, The Dawn Patrol, directed by Howard Hawks, starring Richard Barthelmess and Douglas Fairbanks, Jr. The Devil to Pay. Starring Ronald Colman, Loretta Young, Minna Loy, The Divorcee, directed by Robert Z. Leonard, starring Norma Shearer and Robert Montgomery, Dixiana, starring Beeb Daniels, a lavish musical comedy with Technicolor sequences, Doughboys, a World War I comedy starring Buster Keaton, Earth, directed by Alexander Dovzhenko, Elstree Calling, a British review with color sequences, co-directed by Alfred Hitchcock, Escape, directed by Basil Dean, starring Gerald du Maurier, Edna Best, Fast and Loose, starring Miriam Hopkins in her film debut, with Carol Lombard and Frank Morgan, Feet First, a comedy starring Harold Lloyd, The Flute Concert of Sanssouci, Follow Through. Starring Charles Buddy Rogers, a musical comedy entirely in Technicolor, General Crack, a drama with Technicolor sequences starring John Barrymore, The Girl Said No, directed by Sam Wood, Good News, starring Bessie Love, a musical comedy with Technicolor sequences, Hell's Angels, directed by Howard Hughes, starring Jean Harlow and Ben Lyon, Hell's Heroes, directed by William Wyler, High Society Blues, starring Janet Gaynor, Hold Everything, starring Joey Brown, a musical comedy entirely in Technicolor, Holiday, starring Anne Harding and Mary Astor, Imperial and Royal Field Marshal, Ian Gorgie, exploitation documentary on gorilla worshipping women encountered by an explorer. Box office hit was revealed to be a hoax. Journey's End, directed by James Whale, King of Jazz, a review with Paul Whiteman and his orchestra entirely in Technicolor. Ladies Love Brutes, a comedy directed by Roland B. Lee, starring George Bancroft and Mary Astor. Ladies of Leisure, starring Barbara Stanwyck, Leather-Necking, a musical comedy with Technicolor sequences starring Irene Dunne. Let's Go Native, starring Jack Oakie and Jeanette MacDonald. The Life of the Party, musical comedy entirely in Technicolor directed by Roy Del Ruth. Loose Ankles, comedy drama starring Loretta Young and Douglas Fairbanks. Jr., directed by Ted Wilde. Lord Byron of Broadway, a musical drama with Technicolor sequences. The Lottery Bride, a musical comedy with Technicolor sequences starring Jeanette MacDonald. Madame Satan, directed by Cecil B. DeMille. Mumba, first talking drama entirely in Technicolor starring Jean Hersholt and Eleanor Boardman. Mammy, a musical comedy starring Al Jolson with Technicolor sequences. The Man from Blankleys, comedy drama directed by Alfred E. Green starring John Barrymore. Manslaughter, starring Claudette Colbert and Frederick March. Min and Bill, starring Marie Dressler and Wallace Beery. Monte Carlo, directed by Ernst Lubitsch, starring Jack Buchanan and Jeanette MacDonald. Morocco, starring Gary Cooper and Marlene Dietrich. Murder, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, starring Herbert Marshall. The Mystery of the Yellow Room, directed by Marcel Lurbier. Nerone, directed by Alessandro Blasetti. Nightbirds, directed by Richard H. Berg. No, Nanette, directed by Clarence G. Badger. Not So Dumb, directed by King Vidor, starring Marion Davis. The Other, directed by Robert Wayne. Outside the Law, directed by Todd Browning, starring Edward G. Robinson. Paid, starring Joan Crawford and Robert Armstrong. Paramount on Parade, an all-star review with Technicolor sequences. Peacock Alley, a musical drama with Technicolor sequences starring Mae Murray. People on Sunday, directed by Robert Siodmak. Pre-debuter. Copyright, starring Louise Brooks. Put in on the Ritz, directed by Edward Sloman, starring Joan Bennett, with Technicolor sequences. Raffles, featuring Ronald Colman and Kay Francis. The Return of Dr. Fu Manchu, starring Warner Oland and Jean Arthur. The Rogue Song, a musical operetta entirely in Technicolor directed by Lionel Barrymore. Showgirl in Hollywood, a musical comedy with Technicolor sequences directed by Mervyn Leroy. Son of the Gods, a drama with Technicolor sequences starring Richard Barthelmess. Song Oh My Heart, a musical starring Irish tenor John McCormack, directed by Frank Borzage, and shot in both 35mm and 70mm Fox Grandeur formats. The Song of Love, directed by Gennaro Righelli, starring Dreyer Paler. Isopolar, Spring Is Here musical directed by John Francis Dillon. Street Organs Day, Soup to Nuts, a comedy and film debut for the Three Stooges. Street of Chance, starring William Powell and Jean Arthur. Sweet Kitty Bellairs, a musical comedy entirely in Technicolor. Tarek Nova, directed by Raymond Bernard. The Temporary Widow, starring Lillian Harvey and Laurence Olivier. The Three from the Filling Station, directed by Wilhelm Thiel and starring Willie Fritsch, Lillian Harvey. Tom Sawyer, starring Jackie Coogan. True to the Navy, starring Clara Bow and Frederick March. Two Hearts in Waltz Time, Under a Texas Moon, a musical comedy entirely in Technicolor directed by Michael Curtiz. Under the Roofs of Paris, directed by Rena. Copyright Claire. The Vagabond King, a musical drama entirely in Technicolor starring Jeanette MacDonald. Viaggio Smoking, The W Plan, directed by Victor Saville, starring Brian Aherne and Madeleine Carroll. Wara Wara, directed by Jose. Copyright Maria Valesco Maidana. Now the only surviving silent Bolivian feature film, Way for a Sailor, starring John Gilbert and Wallace Beery. West Front 1918, directed by G. W. Pabst. Whoopi, a musical comedy in Technicolor with Eddie Cantor. Young Man of Manhattan, starring Claudette Colbert, Charles Ruggles and Ginger Rogers. Young Woodley, directed by Thomas Bentley, starring Madeleine Carroll. Serials, Across the World with Mr. and Mrs. Martin Johnson, Hunting Tigers in India, The Indians Are Coming, The Jade Box, The Lightning Express, The Lone Defender, starring Rin Tin Tin, Terry of the Times, The Voice from the Sky. Short film series, Buster Keaton, Our Gang, Laurel and Hardy. Animated short film series, Felix the Cat, Aesop's film Fables, Crazy Cat, Mickey Mouse, Just Mickey, The Barnyard Concert, The Cactus Kid, Wild Waves, The Firefighters, The Shindig, The Chain Gang, The Gorilla Mystery, The Picnic, Pioneer Days, Minnie's Yoo-Hoo, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, Silly Symphonies, Summer, Autumn, The Cannibal Capers, Night, Frolicking Fish, Arctic Antics, Midnight in a Toy Shop, Monkey Melodies, Winter, Playful Pan. Screen Songs, Tal Cartoons, Dizzy Dishes, Barnacle Bill. Looney Tunes, Sinkin' in the Bathtub, Congo Jazz, Hold Anything, The Booze Hangs High, Boxcar Blues. Flip the Frog, Terrytoons, Toby the Pup, Beery Bear The Rainy Day First Love Can Opening the Contest The Race The Robot Oh Magical 4th of July. Or Beery's Birthday The Downer The Nut House The Tooth. Births, January 3rd, Robert Loggia, actor, January 10th, Roy E. Disney, film executive, January 13th, Frances Sternhagen, actress, January 19th, Tippi Hedren, actress, January 30th, Gene Hackman, actor, February 10th, Robert Wagner, actor, February 27th, Joanne Woodward, actress, March 6th, Alison Hayes, actress, March 24th, Steve McQueen, actor, April 18th, Clive Revile, actor, April 21st, Sylvana Mangano, actress, April 24th, Richard Donner, director, producer, April 25th, Paul Mazursky, director, actor, April 28th, Carolyn Jones, actress, May 9th, Joan Sims, actress, May 11th, Bardet Hines, American actor and stuntman, May 31st, Clint Eastwood, actor, director, producer, June 1st, Edward Woodward, actor, singer, June 19th, Gina Rowlands, actress, August 25th, Sir Sean Connery, actor, September 16th, Anne Francis, actress, September 21st, Dawn Addams, actress, October 1st, Sir Richard Harris, actor, October 5th, Yuri Yakovlev, Bulgarian actor, December 3rd, Jean-Luc Godard, director, December 11th, Jean-Louis Trintignant, actor, December 17th, Armin Mueller-Stahl, actor. Deaths, January 31st, Dorothy Seastrom, American actress, February 23rd, Mabel Normand, American actress, July 7th, Arthur Conan Doyle, British author and creator of Sherlock Holmes. August 26th, Lon Chaney, American actor, September 14th, Tom Mintz, American actor, assistant director, September 15th, Milton Sills, American actor, November 8th, Claire Eames, American actress, December 15th, Diane Ellis, American actress. Film debuts, Pat O'Brien, Compliments of the Season, James Cagney, Sinner's Holiday, Buster Crabbe, Good News, Laurence Olivier, The Temporary Widow, Bing Crosby, King of Jazz, Irene Dunne, Leather-Necking, Rex Harrison, The Great Game, Ruby Keeler, Showgirl in Hollywood, Ethel Merman, Her Future, Spencer Tracy, The Strong Arm. References